All right. Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to episode 4 of the Ecosystems podcast with Mark Smith, Chris Huntingford, Anna Demine, and I am Andrew Welch. Will Dorrington is not with us today. I actually don't know why, but he has things. The man has things tonight.
He's a busy man. He's a busy man.
He is a busy guy.
I'm not saying he's getting busy, but he's a busy man.
we don't take a position on what he does.
I want to. I'm up for that, man. I'm definitely up for taking position.
So today we're going down to level 3 of the strategic pyramid, and we're going to be talking about building the platform ecosystem. So for those of you who are just joining us, if this is your first episode with us, I really encourage you go back, check some of the episodes 1 to 3, but we'll kind of quickly recap. So hopefully you can see what I'm sharing. And what I want to reintroduce again today is what we call the strategic pyramid. So in our model, and this is for value and how to value architecture and value work in the cloud, generally the Microsoft cloud specifically. So we've already covered implementing workloads and all that comes along with that, as well as in our last episode, creating the conditions for success and all of the capabilities there. So work around platform management, enterprise architecture, etc. What we want to talk about today and what we really want to focus our discussion on in this episode is building the platform ecosystem. So for those of you who can't see the visual, you're listening to this on the podcast. When we say building the platform ecosystem, we're now really into the core of what a proper cloud platform or a cloud ecosystem needs to entail. We're talking about, at least up in the early days, building and deploying your landing zone across the cloud, integrating landing zones across different technologies. So you may have an Azure cloud landing zone that you're integrating with your Power Platform landing zone. You may have Lego bricks or building blocks for core data platform services or core integration services. So integrating all of that together, building and maintaining and growing your institutional data model, the IDM, which if you are familiar with Microsoft's common data model, in Dataverse and in business applications, an IDM is like a common data model for your organization. So if you're a shipping company, you might have a data model to represent vessels or cargo or whatever your line of business is. Core platform or core data platform services. So think data governance, Microsoft Purview, think Fabric services, OneLake, or your organization's data lake or multiple lakes. So those core data platform services that all the rest rely on. Enterprise data governance, I mentioned Purview a moment ago. And then finally, I think this is the biggest piece of ongoing work, and it's integrating workloads across your ecosystem, across the estate. So we've moved far away from building the workloads, and now we're talking about how to make tens or dozens or hundreds or even thousands of workloads all work together in your cloud ecosystem. So that's our topic today. How do we build these cloud ecosystems, building that platform ecosystem? And then in our next episode, we'll go a layer down.
This is great. I mean, one thing that just popped out to me there under IDM, institutional data models. I was working for a customer about, 6 years ago, and they were a train company, right? So they owned railways, and they had acquired, and this is in Australia, they'd acquired, 3 or 4 other rail companies across the various states. And it was interesting to see that the IDM, as you call it, was the hardest bit they struggled with, because each of these rail systems, even though they're in the same industry, had such different ways of naming and labeling things. And there was this kind of conflict internally around, no, we don't call it that, we call it this, we don't call it that. And so part of what we had to do, because we were moving them all to a single system, a single data set, a single view of what was going on in the organization, was getting them to agree on a common labeling IDM for the organization. And that was a lot of work, because for whatever reason, the legacy, people wanted to protect the way they labeled it because it had some nostalgia, from way back when. So I think that's such an important thing to index on at this level, because having an organization common language for things allows for so much more to be done, because you're taking the risk of misinterpretation out of the mix in designing solutions.
I also think that once you have a common language, it goes beyond having the same labels for data, even though that's a very, very important topic. It sort of reconciliates the people who would rather just mandate, we will do things this way because I am the boss. I am the VP of, I don't know, engineering, or I am the VP of commercial, and I say this sort of data is going to be reflected in this manner. And the moment these people who rather want to wear the boss hat are starting to talk to each other, and instead of mandating, what's going to happen, they actually come to an agreement. It even moves beyond indexing data properly. It even goes into, okay, so these people are going to start talking to each other. They're going to go for a drink, or for lunch, and they're going to start talking about technology and their own ideas. And ultimately, hopefully, they're going to establish the technology. Because I think that with this particular layer, we are potentially going a little bit into cross-cloud. I think we're quite Microsoft, obviously. But at this point in time, we are talking about organizational level. And many times within an organization, you will find those people who are there for the past 25 years, and they have built their stuff into one type of technology. And even though you're coming with, Microsoft View and an ecosystem architecture, you can't just create something separate from it, because then it won't be an ecosystem. It will just be a bigger silo. So the moment people start agreeing on emotional stuff, exactly like you said, Mark, then we start talking about real technology and what the best decision is for things.
So I want to throw a spanner in the works. I don't think this is at all about technology. I think it's part of it, but I think that as the era of enablement takes ahead, I think technology becomes the tool. I think we gotta think about, okay, so like Mark, based on what you said, the people part here is really important, right? Like we have to be able to say, what are the people really expecting? What are the people looking for? And Anna, you made a great point around like people are going to meet up and talk and do the thing. And ultimately that's going to be around some of the technology, but actually the way we break it down is we say, all right, the primary is the people. So they're like the epicenter, and the epicenter is really what we want to drive from an enablement perspective. The next layer around that, the kind of core is the processes. And you say, okay, well, what are the things that like these people need to do? What are the layers of process that we need to bake in here? And then the tech is the thing that enables that, right? So the tech is the thing that just surrounds it. And I'm going to use Copilot as an example here, because I think this is really interesting. When you look at the three kind of buckets or brackets of what people are expecting AI to do, the first line or the first kind of bucket is adoption. It's not the tech's there, right? The tech is going to be there forever, but it's actually how do we adopt that and how do we drive an enablement through that technology? Now, I've seen the stuff that Anna and Andrew have put together from a kind of defined and refined cloud ecosystem, and I use that internally at ANS. Like that's one of our de facto things to use because I think it's a really great reference ecosystem. But it's interesting because when we talk to organizations, they're like, okay, that's cool. How do we get people to do that? And I'm like, yeah, this is where it starts getting really real. So I hope that makes sense, right? Because I think it's so much wider.
I think that you guys, Chris, you and Anna have hit on a hidden benefit, or maybe a not so hidden benefit, or a hidden side of this work building that platform ecosystem. And we started with the institutional data model, so let's pick up there, right? So when we think about that institutional data model or that common data model across an organization, I think that there's really three core pieces of this. One is the business bit, right? Having that institutional data model allows different parts of the business, or if you're in an acquisitive situation where there's a merger, there's an acquisition or multiple, it kind of provides a path to normalizing data that is about the same thing, but is described and is shaped in a different way, right? So there's a huge business benefit to getting everyone speaking the same language. There's also, I think, an obvious data benefit, right? You can more quickly integrate systems. We're going to set that one aside because I know I think we want to talk about people here. The third is the ability to get enabling technology into the hands of people much more quickly, because we don't have to screw around with having an argument about the data model every single time. So I think that, a big part of this is, when we talk about building that platform ecosystem, from the technologist's point of view, it is about doing the hard work under the covers of what most users see, right? To allow users to take that technology, allow people to use that technology as an enabler without having to think about, oh my God, what's happening under the covers, because we've been mature in our approach to the ecosystem and we've done that hard work so that you can just go run with it and do great things.
Oh, I think we actually did a great job from hiding what's real from what the users are seeing. We call that encapsulating, and we tried to use it as a programming method. And then we bundle up all sorts of data from everywhere with various labels. And then we struggle with data duplication. And I don't even want to put in the mix regulations such as GDPR. Like it can all be a big disaster that the user never sees. What are you like? It's not necessarily a thing all the time for the user, because it gets so complex that you don't even think about it as a user, right? But going back to what Chris was saying and Copilot, not you, normal users.
I was just thinking to myself, is now the time we're going to talk about Steve Mordu's blog? Is now the time we're going to talk about Steve Mordu's
No,
blog?
not yet. But
not yet. We'll talk about that later.
It's definitely front of mind. Was my midnight reading last night, right? I guess going back to what Chris was saying with the whole Copilot functionality, I guess this layer of the strategic pyramid is cultural earthquake. It's not just the data, it's the various standards with regards to how we integrate things. How does the data flow? What sort of pointers have we got? How are the teams going to work? What sort of governance and security are we going to establish ecosystem-wide? And I think Chris is totally right. Without proper adoption from the teams who are working on these things, I don't see how we're ever going to be able to do it, because you and I, Andrew, we go there and talk about, and we're just going to move, unstructured data, such as your files and folders, your PDFs, and we're going to do your semi-structured data, such as your Excel spreadsheets, going back to Steve's blog, right? And everything is going to live in harmony. But in reality, you will find that organizations will have people there who have been the subject matter expert on whatever piece of functionality that they thought was crucial for the organization. And then eventually they get a little desk of their own and they're the authority and everyone goes to them and they don't really learn about anything else. No, but their desk is a big deal. It's by the window, they have the picture of their wife where everyone else is hot desking. The individual. They have created this great thing and everyone comes to them and asks them questions. So they are important. So they're not motivated to go ahead and look for newer technology or other ways of doing things. And unless they have a really good leader, and I'm not saying manager here, who's ready to push them towards a strategic way of thinking and who's able to say, yeah, you did great last year. However, these are the things that I think we should work on as a team, then that person's probably gonna hug their Excel spreadsheet for years on end. And when you do come and you're trying to sell, ecosystem architecture like Chris is going to try and do, they're going to be like, no, it's not how we do things.
And I have delightfully American of you to want to say we need to do things differently, but you first started by saying you're doing great. Now let's talk about you need to say something nice, and then you need to issue the criticism, and then you need to say something nice again. That's the way we do it.
The old shit sandwich. And why I thought of that just then, and because I've got 2 points here. One, I've started reading the culture map, and of course that's a classic problem. They give an example of a French person that went to the US, thought she was being a rock star, and her manager was giving her shit sandwiches, and she just saw all the glowing bits of bread on each side, and he thought she was a rock star, and she forgot about the shit that he delivered in the middle because cultural differences. Anyhow, but I digress. One thing that Anna said then was, you know the person. And in my mind, I was like, I don't know the person. And then I knew the person.
The person.
I had the sales rep in South Australia take me to a meeting to sell back then Dynamics, right? And because he had uncovered this large company in insurance, and this guy had spreadsheets connected to spreadsheets connected to spreadsheets connected to spreadsheets. Like, it was the most advanced, complex spreadsheet ecosystem that I'd ever seen. And he brings this guy into the room for us to sell him why Dynamics was going to replace all his spreadsheets. And he was like, this is awesome, right? This is awesome. And we never heard from that guy again, right? And nothing happened with that account because he was like, you've just told me how we're going to unpack why I'm the linchpin of this organization with this technology that might be better, but I will no longer be the linchpin. See you later.
People, man. People. It's the culture thing.
I think we should all, for the next episode, we should all think of who is the person that we remember from our past who was best at obstructing modernization. And we should just call them and be like, hey, do you want to come on my podcast as a special guest? You owe this honor to the fact that you were the biggest pain in the ass I've had to work with.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think that's also much less important than we think, or much less important than we thought at the time when we were working on the project. Because, and I don't know, I think we should start talking about Steve Mordu's website, because it's so relatable, right?
We've gone from pain in the ass to Steve Mordu very quickly here. So,
One of you need to make sure that you got that podcast, that blog up so we can bring it up on screen and people can see where to go to find it. So, Andrew, maybe if you want to grab that.
I guess what I'm trying to say is that those connected Excel spreadsheets, they seem super important, and the individual who's actually developed them believes that he is the man. Nothing's gonna survive, unless he keeps on building on his Excel spreadsheets, and continues carrying on with manual reports and so on and so forth. In reality, you will find that most organizations find a way to work around it. So when we're talking about workloads and deliverables, you will find that little by little, year by year, even though this person believes they're super important and the company will for sure die tomorrow if they leave it, they actually fail to recognize the fact that their application becomes less and less important. And when it's time for restructuring or a new cultural change, that's the first thing that's going to get dropped. So if you're one of those people who believes that your software product is the absolute best, and it's a great idea to just hold all of that IP to yourself, know that you're better off just taking some new certifications and trying to revolutionize these things, because there will come a day when you will become irrelevant, not just for your organization, but overall.
But here's the thing. They're 5 years out from retirement and they just want to hit retirement. No, I'm serious, right? I've had this in 2 organizations where the person doesn't want to change anything. They're 5 years from retirement. They don't want to learn something new. And I've been there. I've introduced new technology and they're just like not interested. They don't want to learn it. They just don't rock the boat. We're almost at the end of my tenure. I don't want to make a name for myself. I'm done. I'm about to collect my pension. I'm on my way.
Yeah, it's a problem.
But they've been in the organization so long and nobody wants to challenge them. Everyone's afraid of challenging them because if you're like, the IT guy, he knows your browser history. He knows where you've been. And there's this kind of fear of IT and what they know and what they see and what they have on you.
I'm seeing it more and more, man. So I do a lot of work in local government, central government, stuff like that. And what I'm starting to notice is that I can speak for the UK, right? There is actually a shift happening. I mean, I'm chatting to people that are typical, in a career, but also actually really interested in doing different things. The one guy I was chatting to is like, let's disrupt the council, blah, blah, blah. I can't mention names and stuff. And I loved it. It was brilliant. He was on a call with me today and I'm like, dude, this is amazing. And he started showing me what he had planned. And I was blown away by the attitude, right? And what I started thinking is that maybe, the young folks coming into the workplace, I say that like I'm an old bat, but maybe the grads coming into the workplace and maybe the kind of push towards redigitization and all that type of stuff is quite good. But I think there has to be a change. I actually agree with Anna. I think change will be forced. This is like a FIFO thing, fit it or fuck off. And you may be 5 years away from your tenure, but that's fine. You can hold on to it as much as you want, man, but it's going to go.
But that's where you need strong leadership, right? You need strong leadership coming in. And so where I've seen big transformation, particularly in federal government scenarios, is where a young CTO or CIO have come into role.
That's it.
They're about to make a name for themselves, right? They don't have history. They're coming in. They don't care about legacy. They care about, hey, I'm going to create the new future. I just find it doesn't work with older chaps.
Yeah, typical. I know what you mean. Yeah.
As you guys say that, and I totally buy it because we've all seen it. But I do want to just offer a story from long ago. There was when I was in high school, I had a teacher. He taught me for geometry and for trigonometry. He had also taught my stepfather in the same classroom, in the same subjects. That's how long this guy had been here.
And Andrew's stepfather is not young. Just putting it out there. He is considerably not young.
Not my dad. And
Stepdad.
He
Not his dad.
never
His
watched this
stepdad.
podcast. My dad watches this podcast all the time. I mean, he I think was our first fan. But anyway, so this teacher at the time, my mother, this was very, very early on in, when people were just playing around with, we could have an educational web page, right? I had been through his class and I think I may have graduated by this time, but I remember my mother telling me this story that she was doing this workshop with some of the teachers in the school on how you can use this particular now long defunct product. And this guy had already resigned. He was retiring in 6 months. And he came into this class on a Saturday morning. And my mother looked at him and was like, what the hell are you doing here? And his response, and he had a great sort of country accent. And his response was, well, Kate, I thought that it is never too late to learn something new. And here's this guy who had been teaching the same subject in the same classroom for 4 decades and had turned up how to use the computer machine in his teaching for the last 6 months of his career. So I offer that you don't have to be a dinosaur.
He's an outlier, and often I find these older people on TikTok that they are young in personality and everything because of their constant learning attitude, right? They've decided to learn it all. They've decided that they're going to keep their brain active. My uncle is a maths teacher and, he's in his late 80s, yet he keeps learning because he goes, if my brain is not learning something new, I'm afraid it's going to start shutting down. And so it's kind of that attitude, right? We're definitely not everybody's let's ride it to retirement and then I'm going to go out and just, smell the roses and things. There are those people, and I hope that for me, it's a goal for me, is that I'll never stop learning. I will always be, what is new? What is on the cutting edge? What am I missing? What's the opportunity? The older I get, I just feel like there's so much more to learn. There's so much more to consume and know.
It's also a feat of responsibility as well, right? So when you are that subject matter expert and you have created something truly brilliant, like these tools I don't want to take anything away from them. They're probably genius, right? Even your guy with like tons of Excel spreadsheets connected to each other, I could never do that. It's like, it's true genius, right? But the moment you do have strong leadership and you have this vision that other people are going to learn about that project instead of just letting you be, to roll with it, then you, as the owner and the father of the, of the thing, all of a sudden you feel a responsibility to teach others, hopefully. And then when you teach, you need to say things out loud. And then, eventually you need to listen to some of the feedback that gets passed back to you. And that's a type of learning as well. So I think with today's episode, we are talking to leadership a lot here, right? We're not here to, cast any sort of ill will to whoever created an innovative product of whatever database they thought was useful at the time. We're here to say, you, leader person, have a good look at what you've got within your estate and make sure that you share that knowledge in order to be able to adopt these new ways of doing business, right?
I want to jump on something Anna said, something that Anna said, though, about, in this episode, we're doing a lot of talking to leadership. Actually, we're probably doing a lot of talking to and with leadership in all of these episodes. But it's one thing for us, and people have been doing this since time immemorial, right? Complaining about how the old folks don't want to learn anything new. And one day Chris is celebrating a very important birthday next month. So, he's going to be there sooner than later. Right. But in any case, I think that there's a huge leadership imperative here. And I will share some statistics. These came, and I actually will share my screen as well for those who are watching on YouTube. So I used this slide in a presentation that I gave. Chris was there as well, at the UK Emergency Services Technology Show last week. And these all come from The Economist, from the newspaper, the news magazine, The Economist, from the 16th of June of this year. So there were three statistics across 3 countries that were listed. The first is that in the United Kingdom, there was an 11% average worker productivity rise in the most productive firms versus the least productive firms. The least productive firms saw no rise in productivity from 2010 to 2019. So if you're at the top, you experience this 11% rise, and if you're at the bottom, you experience nothing. Furthermore, in Canada, productivity growth tripled in the most productive versus the least productive firms from 2000 to 2015. And then finally, and this one's a little bit tough, so for those who can't see the graphic, I'll try to explain this. Firms that were in the 75th percentile of investment in, we'll say, in innovation, investment, and modernization, they enjoyed a return on invested capital that was 20 points higher than the median, and that gap had doubled since 2000, right? What I think about, and I go back to the fable of the boiled frog, right, where you put a frog in a pot of boiling water, the frog will recognize that the water is boiling and will jump out. But if you put the frog in the water and then you gradually turn up the temperature, the frog doesn't realize what's happening until it is too late. And I think this is why this is a leadership conversation, because we're to a point where modernizing is not optional, because the firms that are investing in modernizing are pulling out way ahead of the firms that don't. And this is across the global economy.
Oh, dude, I remember watching this and I loved it. I thought it was absolutely phenomenal. And I will tell you, this is about the way people behave as well. Have I ever shown you the trough of disillusionment slide with regards to upskilling consultants from a technology perspective?
Have you ever not shown us the trough of disillusion? Do you have it?
I don't think I've got it. I'll see if I can dig it out. But basically, yeah, it's terrible, and I got shouted at a user group for showing this. So you know what?
Is it
Quite
obscene?
frankly, no. It's just, I think, relatively accurate.
Just while you're pulling that up, Chris, Anna, Andrew, can you look at this layer that we're looking at on your strategic pyramid? I felt like we kicked off with the institutional data model, but we haven't really covered landing zones. We haven't covered core platform service and data governance. I think we haven't necessarily covered integrated workloads across the estate. And I just think we should perhaps, before we wrap today, as in we've got plenty of time, but we do index on those areas as well.
I was hoping we'd come back to that. I've put it back on the screen for those watching. Anna, you wanna grab one and roll with your favorite?
Oh, are you ready, Chris? Just before we do that, Chris, do you have your one? Yeah. Okay, should we just look at Chris's and then we'll come back to that?
It goes beautifully with the tech, right? So I'm probably gonna build this thing for you. So I'm going to use Power Platform as the example here because I think it's a good one. And with regards to the companies not embracing technology, people be the same, right? And what is ultimately happening is that you got a bunch of people, whether they're citizen devs or not is irrelevant. And what will happen is that they'll go through this area of growth where they start learning stuff. So they're like, okay, we're going through this pain with AI, or we're going through this pain with learning, and we don't necessarily understand it, but hey, you know what? Like, this is hard stuff, right? Then what happens is everyone kind of gets to the top of the hill and they're like, cool, we're experience makers. This is absolutely awesome. Like, we built something cool. And that could be companies, right? Companies going, holy shit, like we've come out on top. Like, we've implemented low code workloads. We've implemented Azure workloads. Like, we've built an ecosystem. This is absolutely awesome. And then they upgrade again to whatever that is, right? Like superheroes or cloud ninjas. I don't know. Cloud ninjas sounds cool. And ultimately what happens now is that with the technology coming out, like tools like Copilot and AI, you are able to now fast track across that growth gap because of the fact that the tech is actually a lot stronger. But what's happening is that there are a lot of people living in this well or trough of disillusionment, companies and people who are like, oh, let's revel in the world of finance and operations and X++, and never shall we ever grow. And eventually when X++ dies, fine, cool, what are they going to do? Eventually when Dynamics 365, most of the config can be done with Copilot, what are they going to do? When companies don't implement AI and they're still living in this well of disillusionments, there will be companies fast-tracking way above them and way faster, right? And it's actually a vicious cycle. So what you will see is that there will be money, there will be more money, and a lot of consultants do this. They're like, okay, and companies do this as well. They're like, holy shit, we're going to stay there and then move because that company is offering us all the money. But then, fuck, that's great, but we can't move because we're in this place of like blockery or digital disillusionments, right? But unfortunately, all these companies that are coming up now, like startups or the Louis Baybuts of the world, are like driving past in Ferraris, flinging the bird at everyone, going, well done, cool for you, man. You stay there. I'll just get there real quick and make loads of cash. And that's what organizations are happening. And actually, one last thing is that is a snake that eats its own tail. And it's terrible because the companies that think things like AI is a fad, or like AI is a fad, or tech is a fad, or low code is a fad, you're all stuck there. And I'll tell you what, if any of you are listening to this, you better sort your shit out quickly from a data and security perspective now. And I'm talking to people as well. And you better start picking up a book and learning, because if you don't, you are going to be stuck there. And unfortunately, you're going to be living in the trough of disillusionment and eventually make yourself redundant. And I'm talking to organizations and people. So I'm done.
If you could not see Chris's slide, you've missed something. You've missed something huge.
It's a terrible slide.
That's the beauty of it, is how terrible that slide is. It's horrible.
My problem is that everyone's hands are like happy, and I don't understand why everyone's happy. Like,
I don't know. I built it 3 minutes before using a presentation because somebody was arguing with me about the fact that I said functional consultants can be made irrelevant.
Oh,
So that's a very, very good point. But it depends, Chris. It depends on how you actually define functional consultants.
Oh, I have a whole presentation on this. Would you like to see it?
Are they the same quality slides we've come to know and love?
They absolutely are. They're incredible top quality. There are even names against them. This is one thing that I love. Okay, and Henry Ford said this, and he said, if you keep doing what you always did, you'll keep getting what you always got, right? And the thing is that actually that's not true right now, because if you keep doing what you always did, you will get much less of what you always got. Right, because you will have market share taken from you by people that know shit more than you do. And I said this on a podcast today. I was like, people are like, okay, is AI going to take my job? I'm like, no, the people that know AI are going to take your job.
Yeah, exactly. And I love what you said, because there's another, and I'm actually just reading something very similar to what you've just said now. They are actually referring to the phrase with great power comes great responsibility. Now, unfortunately, the author of my book is convinced that the line comes from the movie Spider-Man.
Wait, hang on.
Please, we need to tag that author when we post this on.
that is golden.
Right, so he's an American as well, so, if it didn't happen in America, it doesn't matter. But he is right, with great power does come great responsibility. So you're right, if you're chilling in your functional consultant pond, and right now you still have a lot of return of investment, that's great. But like you shouldn't ignore the fact that you do have great responsibility to keep that going. And with that, I'd like to go back to your pyramid, Andrew, because apart from the institutional data model, we are talking about standards overall, right? So we're not just saying that the data model should be consistent throughout your organization. We also say, for example, that you should have enterprise data governance. So it's really great if you're working on a Dynamics project, for example. We do have governance there. We're pretty chilled because we have like security roles and all of that, upgrades to the Microsoft 365 system, and then eventually to Azure. And we're happy that we have data governance. We are talking about enterprise data governance. So we are introducing products and systems that are looking at our overall strategy and our overall data flow and data quality and data sensitivity across our estate, not just within Power Platform or not just within even our Excel spreadsheets, etc., etc. What we're saying here is that when we're looking at building a platform ecosystem, you should have a coherent strategy on how you're going to do data governance overall. And you can't just call yourself successful because your Power Platform has field level security. Like, it's just not going to work that way. If in the end you're using integration with just one admin account and then all of their data ends in a SQL database that everyone's an admin to, then you don't have data governance at all.
Is that not okay?
Is that?
I hear it isn't. It's just what my friends tell me.
You should make a service account to do everything. Oh, shit. Anna, if I'd known that, oh, man, everything's ruined.
I just had this flashback, and the flashback concerns Keith Watling. So I'm sure that some of our listeners or some of our folks who everyone knows Keith, right? So
Was he clothed in the flashback?
I was going to say, was he wearing clothes?
Was he speaking to you from his butt?
Keith does like a fine outfit, so he usually is clothed. But listen, so Keith calls me. This was a few years ago, and he says, "You're never going to believe this." And he proceeds to tell me this story about an organization he was working with that shall go unnamed, where they had a dev environment, a test environment, and a production environment. And what they were doing is they were writing code and making customizations in their dev environment. And if they thought that they worked in dev, they then went into their test environment and wrote the same code and made the same customizations in test. And then they tested it and they thought,
Wow.
well, it works there too. And then they went into prod and they did the same thing.
It's just manual ALM.
Yeah, manual ALM.
It's student-driven CI/CD.
Oh my God.
Hey man, you want some hamsters?
He could not contain himself. He was dying. Like he could not with this.
That's how to put the robot back in the human, man. It's really important that you get as many people as you can to rewrite everything over and over again.
Right.
So genius. But I can understand why. They're just putting people in jobs, man.
They were well practiced. I mean, they had a lot of practice making that customization. They did it 3 times.
Andrew, tell us about landing zones in this context.
So this is one I spend a strange amount of my time, a strangely large amount of my time thinking about landing zones, right? This is a concept. First of all, let's talk about what a landing zone is. And at its core, a landing zone is a collection of technical services that you have deployed and configured such that you are now able to land workloads into the tenant, into the environment, into the virtual machine, into whatever it is that you're landing these workloads in. You can debate some of the finer points of this. A pure landing zone is ideally written. You may have heard the phrase infrastructure as code. You can deploy the thing as code and it kind of materializes, right? There's a different take on this in Azure land versus Power Platform land versus, Fabric land, etc. But that's what a landing zone is. So this is for anyone who is in the business of building cloud infrastructure, whether that is your Azure tenant and the subscription and the connections and the express routes and, etc. that there, or whether it's building your Power Platform environmental architecture, whether it's building your primary data lake, whatever it is, people who are in that world know what a landing zone is. What I find is that people who are more in the implementing workloads, or that has been their career up until now, they don't think in terms of building a landing zone. They think in terms of, I have this app, I need a place to put it, let me build a place to put the app. So the best way to think of the difference is that a landing zone is like the foundation for your house. You would not put up walls of the upper floors of your house until you had built a good foundation. Whereas if you come at it from a workload mindset, you're like, I have a thing, I need to put it in the room, let's build the room. No foundation, no water, no electricity, no nothing. So that's what a landing zone is. And I think that the benefit to an organization deploying the landing zone for their particular technology up front, yes, it raises some of the upfront kind of capital investment, right? But it's so much better in the long run because you're able to deploy the individual workloads so much faster, so much more cheaply. The other bit of this is the platform landing zone integration. And this is, I kind of alluded to it a bit ago, where, you've got your Azure infrastructure folks who are going to deploy their Azure cloud landing zone, and you got your Power Platform folks who are going to deploy their Power Platform landing zone, and you might have data platform guys who come in over top of Azure infrastructure and deploy their data platform specific components. But it's a non-trivial effort, right, to have kind of the overall purview, or to continue with the analogy, to be the air traffic control that makes sure that each of these different landing zones, each of these different bricks or runways, we'll say, kind of fit together in a way where you can quickly land workloads that span the data platform, the application platform, Azure infrastructure, etc. So I just can't say how important this concept is to starting off with your cloud ecosystem, or if you feel like you've screwed it up, to getting that cloud ecosystem back on track. It's like planting the seed in the ground. You can't not do it.
It's like a digital map, man.
Then you can look at the other things that you've got in the estate. We've got their core data services. Now, once you start working on a project, on a platform ecosystem, once you win a deal to go in and and do stuff, it's important to understand that it's very likely that the stuff that you're gonna do or improve or create is not actually the core system that these people are using, right? So even integrating these core data platform services with the rest of the estate using the same principles, making sure that you have landing zones already, making sure that everything integrates in the same way. We call it neighborhoods because we like to standardize the way you're gonna use technology to integrate your data across the estate, using the enterprise data governance principle. Then you need to recognize these core data platform services, and the core service is what the organization actually does. So maybe you're there to improve on, let's just say the example of the HR system, but they are there to sell planes. That's their business. Those are their core business models, but that does not mean that you don't have to make sure that your HR system doesn't integrate with the whole thing so that people are trained and onboarded and interviewed and so on and so forth. And it doesn't mean that your landing zones shouldn't be solid or that you shouldn't look at the institutional data model, even though you don't have necessarily access to, or your workloads are not tapping into all of the systems throughout the estate, but having a standard or at least knowing about it is important. If you are to do something relevant, that's not going to be, again, just a silo somewhere that other people have to knit into the entire system, and that exposes you to gaps and vulnerabilities and so on and so forth.
There's a burning question that I have had for the last 10 minutes around this level, building the platform ecosystem, and that is the how. And why I say the how, in what you've published, there's a lot of this is what it needs to be, but there's what I feel is missing is the how. If you take people that have been great at implementing workloads, they've been great at creating conditions for success, and as we've discussed before, those two levels of the pyramid within 5 years are probably going to have AI do a lot of them, right? So in other words, we become irrelevant those two levels. So therefore, if I'm thinking, okay, I need to get ahead of this game and my role in the career position I'm in, how do I build the skills to be able to consult solidly around building the platform ecosystem? And so therefore, where are the resources that I go out and look at, what is landing zone deployment? What is platform landing zone integration? How do I get really good at that? How do I become authority on that? How to become an authority on institutional data models and being able to go into an organization and create one? What are the steps that I need to do? What's the consulting skills I need to acquire? When I look at core data platform services, what should I be searching for? What should I be constructing? What should I be building out for an organization if I'm called in to do that? Enterprise data governance, integrated workloads across the estate. How do I make sure that I am rock solid across these parts? What are the skills I need to learn? Do I need to go get a TOGAF certification? What do I need to do to really become the guru or the authority at this layer? Being that I'm already coming from perhaps a guru and authority on the implementation workloads and creating conditions for success, what's your advice for those people that go, you know what, I see the puck moving, I see where things are going, and I need to get ahead of that game. What do I need to learn? Where can I find the learning? Where can I find the training to go deep into that area?
Why is it always a puck that's moving?
Because it comes from a story, and I forget the famous American that said it.
I think it was. The Canadians are upset. I think it was a famous Canadian who said it.
It's got to do with ice hockey, right? It's ice hockey, isn't it?
Yes.
Is that what it's got to do with, ice hockey? And it's got to do with don't skate to where the puck is now. Go to where it's going to be next.
I think it's a Wayne Gretzky quote. I could be wrong though.
Yeah, Gretzky is definitely it because that's the word that was in my mind. Yeah, is he Canadian?
Pretty sure he's Canadian. Please, I mean, someone. I'm not a hockey fan.
Okay,
but,
I'm looking it up.
I mean, I don't know, but what I do know is that I always want to be in Andrew's. I always want to be in Andrew's team in a pub quiz, right? He knows so much trivia.
Here's the actual quote. When you win, say nothing. When you lose, say less. Oh, I didn't know that that's actually the precursor to the quote. I skate to where the puck is going to be, not where it has been. So he's actually got about 3 quotes in that one quote.
And where is he from? Where was he? Yeah, he's still around. Where is he from?
Okay, I'm just typing. Where was he born?
Canadian. Is a Canadian former professional ice hockey player. There you go.
Brantford, Canada. He's 62 years of age. He was born in 1961 on the 26th of January. There we go. Sorry, Wayne, for calling you American. It's just as bad as somebody calling a Kiwi an Australian.
Right.
But they're literally the same thing, Mark. Right, and you know what? I get confused for every possible race kind of culture you could possibly think of, man. Like, well, Southern Hemisphere at least. I was told that the other day I was a Kiwi, then an Aussie. I've been asked if I was from Argentina.
I have a lot of questions.
I tell you what, Argentina, I reckon, is the untapped area of IT future. People in Argentina. Yeah.
I don't know if it's completely untapped, though.
I think, in my observation, and I look at the stats of my podcast over the last 6 years, and I'm lowest represented in viewers in South America and Africa. And I'm talking about the continents here.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. Because honestly, you're okay, but it's changing, right? That's just my observation. Is that I don't see audiences in those 2 regions, yet I see massive audiences across Europe, America, and South Asia and those type of areas, but not those 2 continents.
When we went to Argentina earlier this year, we actually saw an immense amount of digital nomads in Argentina. So I do think things are moving, and it's actually a shock to me that you're saying that market is untapped. I was expecting it to be quite flourishing over there in Argentina already, based on the people that we've met just walking the streets or having a coffee, you know? And the speed of their internet as well.
I'm often putting jobs up for people for my personal work on Upwork. And I look at where are the countries that are most represented, right? And of course, I see India well represented. I see Pakistan well represented. I see Ukraine well represented in those gig workers, if you like. I don't see anything, very little, from South America. I'm seeing more come out of Africa, from all the different countries in Africa. But as I say, South America, I'm not seeing those people on those platforms picking up gigs, having very specialist skills. That's my observation.
My sense about Argentina, and like Anna said, Anna and I spent, and Alexandra spent 35 days in South America across Argentina, Uruguay, and Chile earlier this year. And, I have different thoughts on each of those places, but, since we've been talking about Argentina, what an incredible place. It's beautiful. It is clean. It is modern. It's filled with educated people. I think that, if you read the history of Argentina over the last 50, 60 years, it has had some very difficult economic times, which probably contributes to maybe that underrepresentation. But that is, in my view, in no way attributable to, it's just a very educated, very modern society from everything that I can tell. We loved it there. We would move there if it wasn't so far away.
Why are you avoiding my question?
Oh, no, we just went down a rat hole.
No, I know. But let's come back to building the platform ecosystem. How do I get skilled up in these areas? And what I'm really, I suppose, asking Andrew and Anna is that you go back to Cloud Lighthouse. By the way, if you haven't seen it, folks, that went live last week. You can find it as a company listing on LinkedIn, and then you can also go to cloudlight.house and check out the webpage that we now have set up for the show. But I think, guys, it would be awesome to add further learning resources for folks, and just bash them all in there. All those, yeah, there you go. Got it up on screen. Now let's smash those all in there and give people some learning paths, some opportunity to find out. Chris, honestly, bro,
why do I look so sad in that picture?
send me another photo and I'll get it swapped out. In fact, any of you, if you don't like those lips.
So from my perspective, my answer would be twofold here. Once again, this is a leadership thing, because the effort to learn some of these things and upskill is going to be considerable, and you may not be able to learn it by yourself. So if your leadership wakes up and realizes where they are in Chris's slide, they're gonna start hiring some experts. Now, these experts, for example, in landing zones, they will have to be friendly and like normal people, who wanna share some of the knowledge and start working together with other people. So, in my opinion, the very first step is to have leadership adoption and leadership authority here, and the willingness to invest a little bit in this skill, because I think we must stop with, Power Platform so simple, Dynamics so simple. No, everything requires investment. So we need investment. That's how we do it. That's how we start building ecosystem architecture. Number one. Then, if you really wanna learn about it, pick a subject. I guarantee that Microsoft has a learning path for it. There's a learning path on governance, on how to do, a Microsoft runs on trust system overall. Don't get scared about the fact that it's mostly, about Azure, because we are talking here about ecosystem architecture. So it's not just Power Platform. Learn a bit about Azure as well. There are multiple learning paths about, if you will, an institutional data model and how data should be modeled across this state. There's a lot of learning now already about Fabric. There's a huge amount of learning about industry clouds, for example, and those contain all of the above.
So here's the thing, Anna. When I'm talking with people that are not Microsoft, right? They look at something like Microsoft Learn and go, you know what? I don't even know where to start. It's like a mega university. There's courses on everything. We're talking about enablement in this particular area in context of the pyramid. I think there is a need for us to provide not necessarily a learning path, but hey, start here. Like if I go, I want to learn about Fabric. Oh my gosh, where the hell do I start? It's fragmented. It's all over the place. I don't want to be like 2 weeks down a learning path and go, oh, this is actually not like it. it's taken me down a data science path or something like that. I need step 1, learn the shit. Step 2, learn the shit that's going to build on it. Hey, how do I develop my leadership skills? Because I'm not going from I'm in a leadership position, I need to authorize this in my organization. I'm going from I'm currently a consultant and I want to move up to that next level. How do I as a person, so let's forget about the organization making that move. How do I as a person move to that next level? What are the skills I need to develop? What are the skills I need to acquire to become an authority at that level? And that's where I think that there's an opportunity, maybe even a course that you guys could write and make available that people could purchase or something like that would give people this kind of learning path. So the problem is when you follow your nose type learning, you don't know what you missed, and I'm always concerned about, I learn on the job. Whoop-de-doo. The thing is if this is all knowledge, you learned that much of it and you didn't realize you missed all this and you think you're an authority, you're authority on a pinhead, right? There's the whole world out there that you're not an authority on, but because you're tied up in this little area, you think you are. And I think that's why guided learning and people that have spent the time going, what do you really need to know to be a guru in this space? Right, I'll pull those bricks together and show what this building looks like. That's what people are missing in the world that we're in, where there's so much information everywhere. I don't know where to start.
My take on this is, and the cheeky answer, but true, is that yes, Mark, we're working on a course on this in all of our vast free time, right? So Cloud Lighthouse, you're going to find, you will find in the medium term future, say over the next quarter or so, some actual Courses on Cloud Lighthouse or cloudlight.house. So that's there. I think that I can also share some advice, right? One piece of advice is to think about what you already know and look under the covers of that thing. Okay. So for example, say that you are a Dynamics, a FinOps consultant, right? Or you're a FinOps administrator in an organization and you feel like FinOps, and you know about dual write. You know that FinOps is dual writing to Dataverse, so you feel like you know what Dataverse is. But maybe that's the next hop. Go try to learn as much as you can about the things that are either under the covers of what you already know or adjacent to what you already know. So go learn what's happening behind the scenes inside of this Dataverse thing that you're dual writing to, and then start to follow the trail. Oh, okay, so I know about Dataverse. Now I'm going to learn about Synapse, or I'm going to learn about the OneLake capability and the shortcutting of data from Dataverse to OneLake. So start with what you know, and then start to follow the trail. I also think that and we could do around the room here of what is it that if you were going to recommend. So we're going to do this. I want to know from each of you, and I'll share my own. What are one or two technologies that you think are really valuable to learn if you want to make this jump into building platform ecosystems? Where is the Microsoft investment going? What are the linchpin technologies in your view? And I'm going to go to Chris first. What do you recommend people get smart on?
Fabric, OneLake, Copilot.
All right. And why?
So I think that OneLake's going to be the data consolidation engine that allows us to bring kind of all the different kind of fragmented bits together. I think that Fabric's going to be the mechanism to kind of call and talk to that data. And I think that Copilot's going to be the mechanism to build on that data. That's simple. I think that low code is a product, or I know that we say Copilot is a product of low code. I think it's going to be the other way around at a later point. I think Dynamics will be the other way around at a later point. I think it'll be subsequent when you're looking at like building something and you prompting, the byproduct will be Dynamics, the byproduct will be low code, the byproduct will be Power BI. But I think data, a mechanism to consolidate and call, and a mechanism to actually do the thing. That's how I see the pyramid working. And I've thought that the day that you two did that presentation at the user group and you had the kind of OneLake icon, I looked at it and I'm like, this makes absolute sense to me. That's what I think.
Oh, I think it's Purview. I'd look at Purview because I think that trust is the number one thing that organizations need in order to enable anything else. So one technology that can have a watchful eye over all of your data and processes and who's touching what, that's crucial. So I would recommend that people look into that.
Okay. And Mark, what about you?
So I'll pivot away from any tech. You need to master the art of storytelling and telling good stories. And you need to master adoption and change management, because you're going to be taking people on a journey, and people understand stories. They don't understand data. They don't understand, or data points is more to what I'm trying to say here. So if you're saying that this is very much a leadership role, you need to develop the soft skills of leadership. Storytelling, adoption and change. How do you take people on a journey with you? That have them wanting to go on the journey, not, if you like, you shall go on the journey because I'm going to whip you until you get there. So from a leadership perspective, I think you need to have the storytelling and the adoption change management nailed. And if you're looking at adoption change management, don't go past ProSci. It's the best thing out there if you really want a formalized way of being educated in this space. And then the number of resources around storytelling are immense. But I highly recommend those two areas to develop your leadership skills.
Yeah, I totally. And I quickly pulled this up. I'm going to share for those watching the video. This is from a presentation that Anna and I gave at Nordic Summit in Copenhagen this past week. This is why Anna said the watchful eye, because, all right, here's storytelling for you. Some slide animations, the watchful eye of Purview rising above your master data node. Anyway, that's all. Okay. For me, I'm gonna go back to technology. Mark cheated here, but I will allow it because it was really important that be said.
I kind of thought it was about tech, but yeah.
Yeah. The technology that I will call out is Azure Cognitive Search. I think that cognitive search has been something that for some time now that people didn't pay enough attention to because they heard search and they sort of thought, we've been there, we've done that. But cognitive search is used to index the data estate. As long as your data has been consolidated into a data service that is addressable and accessible by cognitive search, it indexes that data previously just to return search results across an enterprise data estate, but it is now effectively the front door to an AI model built in the Microsoft cloud. That's what cognitive search is doing, the indexing of the data that the AI model needs in order to function and to learn. So go learn cognitive search yourself. So just to recap, we have Chris, we have OneLake, Fabric, and Copilot. Anna talked about Purview. I mentioned Azure Cognitive Search, and then Mark talked about storytelling and change management and adoption. So just there, filter out the noise and start with some of those recommendations. There, start with things that are under or next to the things that you already know, the technology or the skills that you already have. That'll help you be more comfortable with it, then follow the breadcrumbs and tune in sometime in the next quarter or so for training coming to Cloud Lighthouse.
I love it. Alrighty, let's switch gears. I take it we can switch gears, folks?
I think we're good.
Okay, what are you learning at the moment?
Interestingly enough, I'm learning about storytelling. And maybe less about storytelling and more about story listening or leadership in general, through books and through studying people, just people around me. Whenever we do a presentation, sometimes we've got opinions that are quite divergent from our own. And oftentimes I am pulled to one side and, made aware that the reality is different to what we're trying to evangelize here, to advocate here from a product perspective. And it leaves me thinking, how are these people in positions of authority? How do they manage to convince organizations to give them a pile of money to waste away? So that's what I'm trying to learn, these weeks. How do these people do it? Because, I want to do it as well. It's crazy, in my opinion. It's just crazy. Yeah, that's the biggest thing that I'm interested in right now.
I like it. I think listening, you touched on something there for me, because I see so many sellers in our ecosystem, and I'm talking about inside Microsoft as well as outside, as in the partner ecosystem. And they rock up with this slide deck. I'm going to present to the customer, right? And this is the first meeting. It's the first fucking meeting. And you already got a presentation for them. And I'm like, how the hell are you at presentation time? You haven't heard. You haven't listened to them. You haven't asked any questions. But let's tell you about what we can do, what we are, who. And look at all our awards. And I'm just like, how about we have no presentation, period, and we ask questions and learn and listen? And it blows me away about how often I feel in my sector, industry and stuff, we just don't listen enough. We always got the answers and we don't listen. We don't ask questions.
By that standard, Anna should pretty much rule the world. I can pretty much assure you she is a better listener than any of the other three of us on this podcast.
Do you know what? I've taught ChatGPT to listen rather than jumping to an answer. So if you're in GTP4, you have this function to now in your settings to basically outline who you are, how you want it to respond, blah, blah, blah. And one of the key things I have in there is when I give you a prompt, before you answer, ask me any questions for clarification until you're absolutely certain what you want me to say. Now, it always prompts me. And then I'll get 2 or 3 prompts. Oh, but are you meaning for this? And then when it gives the answer, I'm like, yes, on point. Because it hasn't just jumped to, I'm going to, put my next word in front of the next and come up with what I think you're asking. It actually asks me clarifying questions to my prompt before it gives me an answer. And I tell you, the quality has gone through the roof.
That's fabulous. I didn't know that it can do that. And I use it extensively. Like, I use it for everything. I reply to no emails. Especially because we deal a lot with solicitors and stuff.
Yeah.
And
Perfect.
What's the point? Yeah.
Exactly. Man, I found it in the legal space. It is pretty phenomenal. As I say, I did it on my will. And I said, what did my lawyers miss? And it came up with 4 against New Zealand law, 4 specific sections. The lawyer didn't even put in there, didn't even cover. And I'm like, why am I paying my lawyer?
I really wish we had this technology before we bought a really expensive house, because now we're dealing with all sorts of.
Well, in the UK, house buying is just a shit show in the UK.
The UK real estate market and process is the most dysfunctional institution I have ever worked with anywhere ever.
I don't know how anybody transacts at the end of the day.
Mate, I don't get it. We just bought a place. It is the most diabolical thing I've ever experienced in my life.
Andrew, what are you learning?
This one is easy. I learned 2 things in the last couple of weeks. The first thing that I learned is that it is very difficult to operate a laptop while you are wearing an inflatable unicorn costume. Chris, would you say that
that's way out there, man? I promise you. Yeah, I'm with you.
So shout to Chris's co-presenter at Nordic Summit, Rebecca Albers. She found out you cannot operate a laptop while wearing an inflatable unicorn costume. Yep. And far more importantly, I learned that the city of Malaga, Spain, is a fabulous place to have a wedding.
But isn't Spain as a whole just a fabulous place?
Spain is a fabulous place. 100%.
Honestly, I've spent, I think, outside of the UK, it's the longest country I've spent time in, apart from, Australia and New Zealand. And because I walked the Camino de Santiago, 33 days across the top of Spain.
Amazing.
Yeah, Meg and I did that just before we moved to the UK. And then we had our honeymoon originally in Barcelona, been back there multiple times, traveled, spent a lot of time in Milan, not Milan, in Madrid. And then in castles around there, because we did a thing called Vaughan there, which was teaching Spanish people English just as a volunteer. And amazing experience. I love that country so much.
Do your former students now all sound like squeaky Kiwis? Is that, did you?
Is that English? Listen.
Squeaky Kiwis. It's like
Squeaky
a minion.
Is that what you learned this week, Chris? Making that noise?
Well, that's one thing. Yeah.
That sounds like you're choking a chicken, man. That sounds like you're choking a chicken.
Hi, baby. How are you?
What are you learning, Chris? What are you learning?
So this is something I've started to include in presentations when we do ecosystem enablement. And other than my 6-year-old daughter, Luna, I don't think anyone can know everything. She legit told me the other day she knows everything, man. She's like, Daddy, I know everything. I'm like, rock solid, dude. We've got a podcast for you to come on. But yeah, it's interesting, right? Because it's interesting because what we've discovered is that, we go into organizations chatting around ecosystem enablement, and actually every time we do it with every customer, we learn something totally new. I mean, like, man, the one organization is like, hey, Chris, what are your best practices around document management? We're like, oh, well, we don't have a work stream for that, so we'll just make one. So we did. And then another one's like, hey, Chris, what about this weird thing in environment strategy? I'm like, oh, dude, I did not know that, but we'll add it. So every time we do this, we keep on growing the ecosystem we're delivering to other people. So we've had this thought, like, why don't we just connect everyone up? And that was what this whole thing was about as well. But like, I've started adding this in the decks that I'm positioning because I genuinely don't know the answer to everything. Like, I mean, I don't understand Purview. I'd love to learn it, but I don't get it. Like, I don't understand it. I don't understand Fabric, but I want to learn it. But as long as I think what my lesson was is that as long as I try and like remain as like not as gobby, but I am gobby, but but try and remain like a little bit humble and think, okay, do I know this thing? No. Am I willing to tell people? Yes. Sweet. Let's go and find the answer. And actually, I've learned that so many people are more reciprocal of like the fact that I might not know, but I'm super keen to go and find out. And actually, I do find out and give the answer to them. And for the most part, but yeah.
I like it.
Yeah. And Chris, as you were saying that, I was thinking about how knowledge spread 1,000 years ago before all the humans in the world had discovered one another, right? And knowledge, a huge part of what was brought back to one's homeland by explorers of that era was knowledge of other things and things that they had learned and things that they had seen that no one had seen before. And for the most part, we don't always get to experience that. But where we are in this particular world, in this particular moment in time, because so much of what we're doing is new, and because so many things still have yet to be seen or have yet to be done in a lot of ways. And this is a very hidden value that I think doesn't get talked about enough in the world of consulting, is that a lot of what you're doing is you're sharing knowledge that you pick up in one place and you're bringing it to all places. You are diffusing knowledge and ideas amongst many different organizations that would not have otherwise spoken with one another or would have not otherwise shared. I had not thought of this until you said that, but I mean, gosh, if you're evaluating which partner to work with or which consultant you want to work with, do a little testing of how good they are at learning things and admitting when they've learned something and being able to take that knowledge and share it with others.
Oh man, 100%.
What you were saying there, you imagine the transformation we could see in the world if industries would learn off other unrelated industries.
Oh my gosh.
How are they doing something over there that's totally unrelated to our industry, but the concept, their thinking, their logic behind it, if we applied that to our industry, and we've seen it like the Toyota way and where lean manufacturing and stuff came from in the automotive industry, and it's been applied to others. But imagine how many different layers could be unpacked. I think one of the biggest benefits Microsoft sellers bring to customers is their cross-industry engagement. Be able to bring, I've seen this in this other industry.
But that happens less and less now.
I know, because everyone's like, no, you need to be industry focused. Yeah. Anyhow, things that I'm learning at the moment is Figma. I'm doing a course on Figma because it is amazing. And it's really driven off the back of a sale that we made. I'm talking the collective we, of a Figma design I had, designed around enablement, a tool that I've published before in my webinars and stuff. And it was part of the enablement of selling a 230,000 seat deployment. Yes, 1,000 seat deployment of Power Apps in Germany. And it shows that I think we've moved on from a world of we need to demo everything. As long as we can tell a story and show the art of the possible, and what Figma does allows you to do that, what can be done on the Power Platform. You don't have to. When I hear people go, it's quicker for me just to build a Power App, I'm like, fuck off. Your Power App looks like shit. Awesome. Yeah. And guess what? The executive layer look at your app and they go, are you kidding me? That doesn't look like an iOS app. Right. And the thing is, but you get a designer to do stuff in Figma. And do you know what? I've found every Figma drawing that my designers produce. I have not had any trouble with my app developers then reproducing it in the app. It's just that they don't have the thinking to actually create that in the Power App from the get-go. Now, we didn't talk about Steve Mordu's post. Pop in and pop out, man, but unless you're having to bounce.
No, I've got to.
Okay, go for it. See around.
Let's take Steve's post in the next episode, because I know Chris was in the thick of the comment stream.
Okay, can you put the post up on screen now, so the audience can see it and what's coming?
Yeah. It's ready then.
And then we'll pick it up. Chris, I'll see you next week in Vegas.
Yes, dude.
I hear it may be snowing there. It could get cold. The other thing is the other thing is that I'm offline the following week, so it'll be the week after. So I think we've got a 2-week hiatus before we put our next episode out there.
Oh, that's all right, man. Well, listen, I'll miss your musk.
Not next week, you won't.
Have a lot of fun in Vegas. We're really jealous for not being able to be there. We do recommend that people read Steve Mordu's blog.
Which one?
Really entertaining.
Sally.
Sally
really
in HR?
Entertaining 7-part blog post there. It's a fully fledged scenario that tells a lot about the realities of software development, even in low code.
Talking about storytelling, this guy knows how to storytell, right? Steve Mordu is a master storyteller. Yeah. You can't get better than him, I reckon, in our space when it comes to storytelling.
You can visualize it, right?
Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah, I love it.
One of my favorite parts, though, and I'll say, I think I could not help but notice a reference to one of our co-hosts early on in this series when Sally goes to the App in a Day course with someone named Chris. Now, in Steve's series here, Chris is a woman, but despite the fact that Chris was a woman, the whole time I'm reading about Chris and talking about when she's talking about how this is super simple. Don't worry, Sally, you can build this app. It's super simple. In my mind, I'm thinking, it's super simple. Listen here. It's very simple. It's super simple. So Chris, the woman, had a very deep South African man's voice in my mind.
Awesome. Alrighty, guys. See you around.
All right, guys.
Thanks for a great
See you later,
session.
guys.
Bye.
See you. See you all.
Thank you.